Hello, folks. Welcome to Kudlow. I'm Larry Kudlow. As everyone in America probably knows by now, and perhaps the rest of the world as well, last Friday, 4 Americans were kidnapped just over the border inside Mexico. Yesterday, they were found inside Mexico. Tragically, 2 of the Americans were killed. Fortunately, 2 were alive and subsequently rescued. Information's still sketchy, and I can't report really any more details than this, but here is what I know. The U.S. administration must, and I mean must, take some actions not only to get to the bottom of these killings and kidnappings, but to begin new policies that will prevent this from happening again. Here's what else I know. The Biden administration's open border policy makes an awful story like this all the more possible. The open border is dominated by the Mexican drug cartels, which most regrettably seem to have bigger armies and more technology than U.S. authorities on our side of the line. Here's what else I know. Mexican President AMLO did cooperate briefly with former President Trump implementing the Remain in Mexico policy to stop illegals. Nonetheless, AMLO has essentially been unwilling to take any strong action to challenge the cartels. As former Attorney General William Barr wrote last week, AMLO's stated policy is, quote, hugs, not bullets, end quote. And he has effectively shut down counter-narcotics cooperation with the United States. Here's what else I know. In the last 2 years plus, way over 4 million illegal immigrants have streamed across the open border. It is a catastrophe, undermining American sovereignty, doing great harm to American citizens, their families, their businesses, but it has also done great harm to the illegals who are spread across this country in various cities and elsewhere, in so many cases with no place to go, no place to stay, and no financial help. It is a humanitarian catastrophe and no response from the Biden administration, who remains in complete denial. The president has been near the border for a brief photo op in El Paso, and while administration spokespeople continue to deny the problem, no serious plans to solve it have emerged. Here's what else I know. The drug cartels that control the border, and indeed control much of Mexico, have engaged in human trafficking, sex trafficking, drug trafficking, and dominate the most incredible, lawless part of the earth anyone can imagine. And, as I said, these cartels have their own armies and war technology. And then, of course, what we know is the scourge of fentanyl, whose raw materials are sent to Mexico after being produced in China and then processed in Mexico and then distributed by the cartels in the United States. Now, in his brilliant press conference today, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina cited facts such as 200 Americans dying every day due to fentanyl overdoses, which he called the equivalent of a new September 11th every 2 weeks. Mr. Graham, who will be here in just a few moments, said 106,000 people last year died of drug overdoses, 70,000 related to fentanyl. The fentanyl problem from China to Mexico to the U.S. is multiplying exponentially. In 2020, 4,791 pounds of fentanyl were seized at the border. The next year, 2021, that went up to 11,201 pounds. And in 2022, seizures were scored at 14,700 pounds. Fentanyl is a poisonous weapon of mass destruction, and authorities really don't know how much got inside the U.S. and was actually sold. Last night, Senator Marsha Blackburn said on this show, the Mexican cartels have increased their business from roughly $500 million back in 2018 to over $13 billion currently. And with all this, Joe Biden's press secretary, Ms. Karine Jean-Pierre, had the gall, the nerve, to make this statement yesterday.
Because of the work that this president has done, because of what we've done specifically on fentanyl at the border, it's at historic lows, historic levels that we have been able to record a number of personnel working to secure the border because of what we've been able to do. Seizing that fentanyl, we've done it in a historic way. That's because of what this president has done.
This is just the most incredible, flat-out lie. And frankly, men and women of common sense know it. They know it. A week ago, former AG William Barr wrote in a Wall Street Journal op-ed that it was time to step up the engagement of the U.S. military in pursuit of the running Mexican cartels. Senator Lindsey Graham, our next guest, put this way in a brilliant press conference today. Please take a listen to his proposal.
We're going to do two things today. We're going to introduce legislation in the coming days and try to make it bipartisan to designate these groups foreign terrorist organizations under U.S. law to open up more capability to go after them and their conspirators all over the world. Secondly, we're going to introduce an authorization to use military force where the United States military can go in and destroy these labs and destroy these networks if possible.
All right. Finally, there are a lot of moving parts to this story. There's the tragic death of American citizens, there's the China card, there's the Mexican government looking the other way, and of course there's the open border that makes this catastrophe possible. There's the issue of American national security, health security, sovereignty, law and order, and frankly, the lack of protection of human beings on both sides of this unguarded border. And before we hand it over to Mr. Graham, let me remind folks, my last thought. Today, March 8th, 2023, is the 40th anniversary of my former boss, President Ronald Reagan's powerful evil empire speech, which really was the beginning of the end of Soviet communism. Mr. Reagan argued constantly, peace through strength. That's what the Gipper preached. Regrettably, most regrettably, from an optimist like myself, I would suggest to you that today we have neither peace nor strength. And that's my riff.